All right, so here's a big story that you need to know about. In Texas yesterday, a three-court panel in a 2-1 vote rejected Texas's new redistricting plan and the drawn districts for the upcoming elections. That part's significant. What's really significant is the dissenting opinion written by the one judge who said, this is wrong. What you're doing is unbelievable. Here to talk about that, Hans-Jan Spakovsky, Manager, Election Law Reform Initiative and Senior Legal Fellow at the Edwin Meese Center for Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, thank you for being here. This is a big case because if, for example, Texas isn't allowed to redraw districts and California is, where California absolutely used race as a foundational principle of writing their new districts and are in the process of doing that, it could upend Congress. It would be a terrible outcome. You read the dissenting opinion. You saw the case. What's your take?
Well, it was really interesting. You know, the majority opinion, which everybody made a lot out of, came out a couple of days ago. The dissenting opinion didn't come out till last night. It's a 100-page opinion by Jerry Smith. Jerry Smith is actually on the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. It is the most scathing denunciation of a majority opinion I've read in my entire legal career. In fact, he accuses the Judge Brown, who wrote the majority opinion, saying that the Texas redistricting was illegal. He accuses him of a pernicious judicial misconduct. And at the end of the opinion, he lists what he calls are all the lies and misstatements that Brown put into his majority opinion. Smith basically says this was clearly political gerrymandering. Political gerrymandering is constitutional. It's not a violation of the law. It was not a racial gerrymander, as the majority says. And I got to tell you, while Texas may have lost before this three-judge panel, they've now appealed it to the United States Supreme Court. And Jerry Smith, who wrote the dissenting opinion, he is a well-respected jurist at the Supreme Court. So I think they're going to pay a lot of attention to what the dissenting judge says in this case, particularly because he doesn't just say the majority is wrong. He accuses them of misconduct.
So the Supreme Court most likely would take that case, I would guess, but I never predict what the court's going to do because it's never easily predictable. What's your feeling, though? You've watched this your entire career.
Actually, Steve, this is one of those situations where the Supreme Court has to take it. And that's because these kind of Voting Rights Act cases go before a three-judge court panel. As you know, that's unusual. And they have a direct appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court.
So they have to take it. All right, I didn't realize that. That's why we have an expert like you here. What happens in California? If California did gerrymander using race, that too will go straight to the Supreme Court, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, once the court judges there make the decision. And look, it's pretty clear when you look at the new proposed maps in California. They actually did use race as the guiding principle in drawing up the new boundaries and basically freezing Republicans out. So I think the lawsuit in California actually has a pretty good likelihood of success.
Wow, wouldn't that be something? I mean, just game this out for a second. If you get +5 in Texas, California gets set aside, they get 0. And then you add in one from North Carolina, one from Ohio, maybe Indiana comes in, but one from Missouri. Florida is considering redistricting. That'd be 5 out of Florida. And then the Supreme Court case that's still pending from Louisiana on race-based gerrymandering. Right. That could flip 12 seats from what I read to the Republican side in places like Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and, of course, Louisiana. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that case before the Supreme Court is very important. It's called Louisiana versus Calais. And what the court asked the parties to brief the justices on was, can race ever be used in the redistricting process, or is that a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendment? And depending on how the court comes out, the kind of racial redistricting that Democrats It's Democrats that have been doing that for decades in order to favor them when it comes to elections. Uh, it may really knock that out, and they should.
And they
Race should
should,
not
absolutely
be.
should. So let me ask you this. You've got
Yeah,
all of New England, for example, not a single Republican member of Congress.
right.
You know, you've got 165 million people in America today that have zero Republican representation in Congress. Zero. Conversely, you got about 65 million Americans that have no Democrats representing them. The Democrats have gerrymandered Illinois, Massachusetts, Connecticut, all across America. Would it affect those states as well?
No, because they, well, I mean, potentially if they can show that that was done on a racial basis when they drew the lines. But what people need to understand is that everybody's been complaining about Texas and the Republicans engaging political gerrymandering. Well, the Democrats have been doing that for decades, and they've basically maximized, as you said, the political gerrymandering in those states. Look, the other thing that nobody's talking about is, remember, the census admitted making huge mistakes last time, and they undercounted Texas and Florida. After the 2030 census, if they do an accurate census, because of the huge population increases in Florida and Texas, which are red states, they probably will get an additional 3 or 4 congressional seats.
Each or between the two?
Total. The total between them, they probably will get between 3 and 4 additional seats.
All right, so, but here it is, Hans. If you get, if the numbers are right, you get about 12 back because the Supreme Court rules properly. And the Supreme Court upholds Texas and these other states like North Carolina and Missouri and Ohio and maybe even Florida. You could see 25 seats potentially go to the Republicans. I mean, it'd be earth-shattering, politically speaking, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. And let me tell you how those states could make it even better. If they implemented their own census, state census, and started counting and only using citizen population when they do redistricting instead of total population, so that you're cutting out all the aliens in those states, legal and illegal, that would shift even more seats from the Democrats to the Republicans if it's based on citizen population.
Sure. So you know, predicting what courts are going to do a little bit dicey, but in this case, you think it's pretty clear cut on all of these cases we've just discussed, which means the Democrats tried to play a game and got burned badly. The question would be, if the Supreme Court decision doesn't come out till June, will states like Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, will they be prepared with new districts right as soon as the decision comes out? Because in order to get to the midterm elections, they'd have to be ready right then.
I think they will be prepared, but look, the Supreme Court understands how important it is that they get decisions out quickly when they involve election issues. So I suspect they're not going to wait until June to get this decision out. I think we will get it sometime after the new year, maybe as early as April.
All right. Well, that'll be incredibly important. Hans, really appreciate it. This is one of the most important things nobody's talking about. The Texas case, very interesting now because of what you said in the dissenting comments from Judge Jerry Smith. Hans, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right. There you have it. You are up to date on the redistricting and how important it is. I'll be back with an update on the economy.